Nightmares 2 is a game that released in early 2021 and is a sequel to the game that I really love, which is Little Nightmares 1. Not the most creative title, sure, but Little Nightmares 1 is a type of uses the format of video games to the best extent. The sound design and how it just throws you into the world and you having to piece together what's happening is genuinely, I think, incredible for the genre. The most obvious comparison to Little Nightmares are the Playdead games, which I feel popularized the genre of, lack of a better term, little kids running in scary environments, which are Limbo and namely Inside. While I think both games are good, I have the likely minority opinion that Little Nightmares is far greater than the two. Controversial, I know, but I think I can go on forever on that, maybe even its own separate video, but the TLDR is that I like how the environmental storytelling unfolds more in Little Nightmares than in Inside. That just kind of throws you into its world. Barely any intro cutscenes, no setup for characters, it's just go from the jump, having you as a player go along with the ride, immerse yourself in its world. The unraveling of this weird Tim Burton-esque dreamlike world as you start in the bowels of the ship called the Maw, and work your way up to far more sinister creatures and events. At the end, you get a small puzzle piece of what is occurring in a much larger world, which I think is executed extraordinarily well. Lengthy preamble, I know, but this ultimately leads to the sequel, which I also really love. Not as much as the first, but it adds a lot of things which I really appreciate. The one thing it adds that I think most people overlook in this game is what I wanted to focus on, which is kind of correlates to the title of the video. I love when video games can go a bit more hands-off when it comes to player interacting with the game. Less choreographed press X to feel emotions and more natural, having the player's direct actions leading to organic outcomes. This leads us back to the grandfather of this concept, which is a game released all the way back in 2001, Ico. Ico was originally created by director Fumito Ueda as a roughly 3-minute short movie, which, before they knew the technical limitations of the hardware that they were going to use, had the foundations of what Ico's story and gameplay were going to be. Many games back then had just started using AI characters in 3D environments in new ways than was typically seen at the time with 2D games. Ueda wanted the player to feel like you could intervene in a world in a very direct way that felt natural with the world. I think the genius of Ico, aside from the still incredible atmosphere and environments that hold up pretty goddamn well, is the hand-holding gives players twofold. One, gives players a chance at hand-holding with the opposite sex, which, let's be honest, is fairly non-existent for gamers. And two, gives players the powerful image that transcends cultures, which is a boy and a girl holding hands. The game, through this mechanic, has a player naturally connect with Ico and Yorda and make you actually care for them without cutscenes and with dialogue, which are pretty sparse to begin with. The game has, I think, like 4 cutscenes in total, and the bulk of the characterization is through the player establishing connections with the characters with a simple but ultimately incredibly effective device. The few times I've heard people discussing this game in the wild is along the lines of, isn't this the Escort Quest, the game of a hand-holding simulator? Which I think is kind of undersells it. Honestly, when I think this game does with a very simple concept and honestly runs with it to make a quick, tight, 4-hour journey that still holds up incredibly well. If you haven't, please go play it, Ico. I think, I know people talk about the studio's sequel, which is Shadow of the Colossus. I love that game, which is also really incredible. But Ico really holds a special place in my heart, and I think even as the old man that I am, I would love to introduce this game to more of the youngins. So please go play it. With this in mind, let's go back to Little Nightmares 2. Which also had a hand-holding mechanic, which I believe uses it to the same effect, but ultimately leads to a different outcome that can only be done using this mechanic. Unlike Ico, your hand-holding buddy, Six, the protag of the previous game, you don't need to lead her away from danger, and aside from helping her cross gaps, you don't even really need to hold her hand that much. Little Nightmares 2 came out a few years ago, which had many streamers play in the game, and watching their reaction to the game, specifically the hand-holding, it occurred to me how, effective it is, even in this game.
Oh, we hold his hand. Okay, that's kind of sweet, right? That is kind of sweet.
So I don't even know if these are... Oh, we're holding hands. That's so... Oh. That's so wholesome.
Hold R right trigger to hold hands? Aww.
Guys also told me in the demo, check this out. You can grab hands! Bro, tell me that's not cute, bro.
Almost all of them made sure to check in on 6, make sure they were okay. Little Nightmares 2 had no cutscenes, like just very little dialogue, if any at all. So all the characterization that the player puts on the 2 characters is all natural, and like Ueda did with Ico, gave the players a more direct connection, and allowing them to feel like they can intervene and care more for the safety of the characters. Where this differs from Ico is how it uses this organic bond the player has with the characters and uses that to elicit more emotion, specifically at the end of the game. This is where I need to go into spoilers for the ending of Little Nightmares 2. If you haven't already played it, please do, along with the first one. As I said before, they're both great experiences that really deserve your time, and going into them blind adds to your experience that you honestly won't regret. If you've already played them or just love ruining things for yourself, here we go. So at the end of the game, Mono enters a signal tower to find 6, who has become a distorted giant. And after Mono returns her to normal, after destroying a music box, the two make their escape, running from the monstrous glob of eyes. They are at the exit, when the bridge suddenly collapses, splitting 6, who is already at the door, and Mono has to make a jump. Like countless jumps prior, 6 grabs Mono's hand, hanging over the edge. You're waiting for her to pull Mono up, but unlike any prior jumps, you're hanging longer than ever, and just as that uneasy feeling starts to creep in, 6 just... This on my first playthrough had my jaw on the floor. It gave me such a sinking feeling in the pit of my stomach, this feeling of betrayal and multiple screamings of "You bitch!" as Mono falls from 6's grasp while 6 just walks toward the exit. This moment has stuck with me as it really shows what the medium of video games can achieve. This organic connection throughout the course of the game, which is entirely up to the player, makes this more of a heartbreak. This takes that organic feeling from Ico, this direct communication between player and character that Ueda established, and asks, how can we emotionally betray the character using this? And to an extension, the player as well. This game with no dialogue made this hit harder than on an emotional level than most scripted games with conventional character arcs and dialogues. That betrayal that Mono, and to an extension the player feels during the moment, is incredible, and really shows how a simple concept of hand-holding in a video game can really bring out some emotional gut punches that only the medium of video game can achieve in this way. Looking back at scenes with 6, it was obvious something was kind of off about her, but I kind of just overlooked it. But the feeling of, hey, that's my buddy, come on, we gotta go, make sure they're okay, persisted till the end, which honestly made the betrayal more effective. This, along with Ico, which established this, almost 24 years ago, God, I'm old, shows that less is better, and in storytelling in general, that the most simple of ideas can bring about some amazing outcomes.